Greetings everyone, I'm Kevin and today I'm doing the Do I Have That Trope challenge. I found this yesterday, so I printed it. I just took all the tropes and printed them or like copied paste into a different document. I haven't looked at the tropes because I wanted this to be kind of like a surprise to me, so I didn't have the books in mind for the tropes. But I printed it, so I have all of it on here. This trope was created by Robbie from his book Stuck in a book. I will have the link to his challenge, to his channel, and the original video down below. As of making this video, the original video was put on private, so I don't know if it will be taken off private in the future, but I will be linking it down below just in case. There are two rules to this game, and it is that you can only use one book once in this challenge. So if I use Heartstopper Volume 1, I can't use it for another trope because I've already used the book. So I will put the stack of books to the side and keep track of what books I have picked up, like I will keep track of that. And the second rule is that if you don't have a book for a trope, you have to add a minute to your total time, which I'm not looking forward to. So for simplicity's sake, I have my phone here with the time, and whenever I get a trope that I can find a book for, I will use this marker to mark that one, and I will know how many minutes I will add at the end of this challenge. And I have my bookcase behind me with 6 shelves, and I only have one computer. I only have one computer, but I only have one camera, which is the one that you're seeing through right now. And I have my phone, but I needed my phone for a timer, so I don't have a way to show my entire bookcase or my other bookcase. So I have these 6 shelves. I have organized it alphabetically, and I have another shelf that is for a few books that I haven't read that I didn't want on my TBR bookcase. And I also have a shelf for science fiction books. So if I find something on here that I have that is a science fiction, I will go to my science fiction bookcase and bring that out and put it on a stack here. So I think that's all of it. I think I've gotten through everything now. So let's open this paper and see what the first trope is. And begin. Okay, so the first trope is a love triangle. A book featuring a character with 2 love interests. The Hunger Games. Second, enemies to lovers. A book featuring 2 characters that begin as enemies and then it turns into love or lust. I have quite a few. Oh my god. Okay, Captive Prince. We're gonna go with Captive Prince. Third trope, The Chosen One. A book featuring a character destined to save the world. Harry Potter. Found Family, a book showing characters creating a chosen family. A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Gray Morality, a book featuring characters that don't appear either good or bad. Oh my god, okay, this one. I'm going with this. I will explain at the end why I chose the books. And then we have competitions, games, or tournaments. A book featuring one of these as a core element directly involving the characters. Catching Fire. It is a different book, so I do count it. Sibling Rivalry, a book that contains siblings pit against each other. Hercule Poirot's Christmas. Then we have Revenge Plot, a book that contains a character or characters whose motivation is fueled by revenge. Frostblood. Here Comes the Cavalry, a book that just when your protagonist is going to lose, here comes the unexpected hell. That could be any book. Everything Leads to You. The Dark Lord, a book containing a character who appears to be doing evil for evil's sake. Want. Then we have That was The Dark Lord, yeah. The Orphan Protagonist, a book featuring a character whose parents are either dead before or at the beginning of a book. Another Orphan. Daughters of Nori. The Quest, a book featuring the main protagonist going on a journey for a particular goal. Wonderscape. Friends to Lovers, a book featuring two characters who have a friend dynamic who eventually develop a romance. Okay, Friends to Lovers. I'm going Heartstopper. The Book Loving Character, a book featuring a character who loves reading books. Okay, Meet Cute Club. Amnesia, a book featuring a character, normally the protagonist who suffers from amnesia. A character who suffers from amnesia. More Happy Than Not. Magic School, a book featuring a school setting of the magical variety. Every Heart a Doorway. The Bad Boy Character, a book featuring a character who is bad, brooding, acting character, most commonly paired with a sad, tragic backstory. The Cavicious Spirits. Resurrection, a book that features a character who you thought was dead is back again. Character you thought was dead. Character that I thought was dead. Lord of the Rings. Redemption Arc, a book featuring a character who was previously a bad, evil character who wants to change. Oh my god. The Humans. The last one. Okay, Forbidden Love Romance, a book featuring a romance that can't work. King's Rising. Stop. 9 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay. So the first trope is love triangle, and I chose The Hunger Games because this is kind of like the story of Katniss Everdeen, and she is chosen for The Hunger Games. I feel like everyone knows the plot of The Hunger Games, so I don't know how much I have to actually explain of it. But in The Hunger Games, because in like the interviews and stuff before going to the Hunger Games and actually playing the Hunger Games, in like these interviews and the things that they have to do to gain sponsors, Peeta, who is sent there as a volunteer for District 12 with Katniss, admits that he has feelings for Katniss. So to kind of like survive the games, they play that they are falling in love. And in the series, it's kind of like, does she have a thing for him or for Gale, her best friend? Like, it's a love series, a love triangle. I chose this book just because it's the first book in the series. I didn't really think that much of which book in the series to choose, so I just took it. It was the first one that I thought of because it is the Hunger Games trilogy. And I guess the love triangle starts in this book as well. The next trope is enemies to lovers, and I chose Captive Prince because it is very much enemies to lovers. Again, I went with the first book in the series instead of thinking which book in the series fit the trope most. But this is kind of like a dark romance. I would say it's pretty dark, where we have two kings or two princes. They are two crown princes of two different kingdoms in this place. We have Damien, who is the prince of Achilles. Damien is sent as a sex slave to Vir. So to the capital of Vir, where he meets the crown prince of Vir, who is underaged. Like, he isn't technically underaged, he's just not of age to take on the crown. I mean, like, a lot of kingdoms have that, where if you're not a certain age, you have someone else acting as the monarch until you are of age. I know we have that kind of like in Sweden, which is a monarchy, and it's the beginning of a romance between these two crown princes. And so that's why I chose it as enemies to lovers. They hate each other, and this is literally enemies to lovers. They are enemies in this, and I understand, like, a lot of people, there are a lot of critique or a lot of criticism towards this series because it is seen as abusive, but if you continue the series you will understand that what starts off as very negative and abusive, like it is, I'm not at all saying that the romance in this series is at all something you should strive for in your own life, because it's not. But if you read the first book and give up, then you won't like see the growth that the characters are doing. But it's definitely a forbidden, or not a forbidden, but an enemies to lovers situation. The series, not this specific book on itself, because the story, the romance, is the entire series, the entire 3 books. The next we got was The Chosen One. The first book that came to my mind was Harry Potter. I only owned the German edition after what happened with J.K. Rowling, who should not be named, who I usually do not name. I sold everything that had to do with her. Apart from this book and the movies, I have a different relationship to the movies. I love the movies. I haven't been able to watch the movies since what happened with J.K. Rowling, because she is literally going after my people, the trans community. But because this was in German, it had special meaning to me. That's why I kept this specific book and not any of the other books. But it's definitely Chosen One. The next one is Found Family, and I chose The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet because this is very, very, very much found family. People from different parts of the galaxy come together on this spaceship, the Wayfarer, and they become a family. Like, it's as simple as that, and it's a really beautiful space story, like a sci-fi story set in space travel and all of that, and I love those things. This is definitely a series that you would love if you enjoy Star Trek and those kinds of sci-fi stories instead of Star Wars. Like, if you love Star Wars and a lot of action, a lot of fighting and stuff like that, you will not probably enjoy this because it has basically none of that. It is a lot more focused on the human aspect, the mental aspect, like life, in philosophical questions, in family and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed this. It's a great sci-fi story, so Found Family. Then we have the trope Gray Morality, and I chose Cosmonauts. The reason I chose this is because these cosmonauts are technically criminals, but they themselves consider themselves heroes. So I thought that was kind of like a gray morality thing, that you do something that is bad, but you think it's good. So it's like, you know, like a gray area. So what they're doing is, in this galaxy that they live in, there are princess games where the person who wins, the knight who wins a fight, gets the princess. The princess is basically a prize to be won. And the cosmonauts are these fierce, awesome queer women who fight for the princess, and then what they do when they get the princess, they release her. She is completely free to do whatever she wants to do, and that's kind of like why I consider this to be gray morality. And then we have competitions, games, or tournaments, and I chose Catching Fire because the Hunger Games. The next one we have is Sibling Rivalry, and I chose Hercule Poirot's Christmas. The reason it took a while for me to figure out what to go for, but I decided on this for one very specific reason. This is a murder mystery. I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. But we have this family in this kind of like big house, kind of like a rich family, and the dad dies. And he has these sons who do not go well together, very much sibling rivalry, and the whole murder thing has a lot to do with the sibling rivalry, and I'm not going to say any more of that, but definitely sibling rivalry in this. Then we have Revenge Plot, and I chose one of my favorite fantasy books of all time, which is Frost Blood. The reason I chose this is because this is set in a world of eternal winter, basically. It's a polar fantasy. The setting, the first kingdom that they're in is a polar fantasy kind of world. It's always winter. And we follow Ruby, who is a fireblood. And being a fireblood is not a good thing if you live among frostbloods. Frostbloods are people who can control frost, snow, ice, anything that is cold. They're kind of like Elsa in Frozen. Like, that's a good way to think of what a frostblood is if you're not sure what that means. It's basically Elsa from Frozen. And what another thing that frostbloods have is that they're very reserved, very calm, while firebloods are, they can control fire, heat, and they're hot-tempered. They can get angry very quickly, and they're a lot more impulsive and rash and rush into things and stuff like that. And Ruby is a fireblood, and she has to hide that she's a fireblood, but she is found out very, very quickly, and frostbloods kill her mom, who was the only remaining family member that she had. And she is put to prison. Ruby is put to prison, and she, thanks to a rebellion group, they free her and like take her in, and down with the king is basically their whole idea. We're gonna use you, we're gonna get your help to get our king off the throne and put this guy on the throne instead. Like, that's their whole thing. And Ruby is kind of driven by this revenge that they killed her mother, they put her in prison, they hate people like her because she's a fireblood, and they hate firebloods, and so she acts like she wants them all dead. I could have used this for enemies to lovers as well, because this has one of the best romances that I've read in a fantasy book. I really enjoyed the romance in the series. I really loved it. I just really love how the relationships were portrayed and explored in the series. Then we have one that I had a lot of issues with, and it's Here Comes the Cavalry, a book that just when your protagonist is going to lose, here comes the unexpected help. And I chose Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. This may sound very strange, and like it doesn't look like a book that it has something like that, but hear me out. In this book, we follow Emmy and her best friend Charlotte, and they are film buffs. They love everything to do with movies, Hollywood, film sets, and stuff like that. Emmy actually works at a film set for a film studio. She kind of is the designer, the interior designer. She finds furniture to go with different sets for the movies. And during one, I don't know like the proper word for it, but there was this kind of big auction at a former actor's house where they said that you can go in and you can buy anything from this house, like basically thrifting, a big sale of someone's home. It was basically the thing. So Emmy and Charlotte go to this house. It's one of their favorite actors of all time, a big Western Hollywood, not Western Hollywood, but Western movie kind of thing, you know, like Western movies with cowboys and ranches and stuff like that. And they went to his house. He was recently dead, and they found a few things that they wanted to get, so they got them. And in one of those things, I think they bought like old movies. I don't remember if it was like old movies or vinyl records or something like that, but they bought something, and then when they got home, they opened these and they found letters. There were letters from this guy to his daughter, and Emmy and Charlotte felt like it's gonna be like our life's purpose to find this woman, his daughter, and get her these letters that he never sent. So they go on this journey to find the daughter of this actor to deliver the letters, but they find out that she's dead, but her daughter is alive. So they find the daughter and helps her. For the first time in her life, she knows who she is. Like, she finds out the missing pieces to her life's puzzle and stuff like that. So the whole thing, like a book that just when your protagonist is going to lose, here comes the unexpected help. So Emmy and Charlotte are the unexpected help helping this girl because she's in foster care system. She is basically homeless, and a lot, like, she has her life is a huge mess, and these girls find her and help her figure out who she is. And it's just a really beautiful story. It's also a queer romance. It's sapphic, and the sapphic romance in this is super, super cute. I really enjoyed it. Then we have the prompt, or the trope, The Dark Lord, and I chose Want by Cindy Pott. I really enjoyed this. It's a good like YA science fiction story. It's a duology, so this is the first book in the duology. The reason I chose this as The Dark Lord is because this is set in a futuristic Taipei, which is the capital of Taiwan, and which is a very cool setting for the book, to be honest. But in this book, we're following like a group of people who are trying to save the world, or like their city, from this big corporation who, for this huge corporation, everything that they care about is money. They create suits and they create things that hurt people. It's kind of like a caste system in this. So we have the people who are rich and we have the people who are poor, and they are two different groups of people with different perks and rights and stuff like that, and possibilities. Like, you can't become anything if you're born in the wrong group, and our main character is born in the wrong group. But the CEO of this big corporation is a bad guy. He's a very bad guy. I don't want to like give too many details, but I really enjoyed this. I think it's something that people who are not that into science fiction but love fantasy could enjoy. This has to do with a guy who is trying to infiltrate this big corporation to kill the CEO and kind of like know their secrets and stuff like that. Then we have the orphaned protagonist, and I chose Daughters of Nori because these two girls who are the protagonists are orphans. Do I need to say more? This is kind of like a fantasy book set in an alternate past Nigeria, and has to do with old Nigerian folklore and mythology, and it's really good. Like this, I am going to continue the series. I gave this book 3 stars because there was just too much. This entire book, I'm gonna say it like this entire book felt like a setup. It is the first book in a series, so I understand that it's a setup, that it's setting up a bigger thing. But that's kind of why I gave 3 stars, because I wanted more from the story that I feel like I'm going to get in a second or third book. But this book in itself got 3 stars. But I really enjoyed the mythological aspect of it, the society aspects as well. It was really fun. Then we have The Quest, and I chose Wonder Escape. This is a middle grade science fiction book that I absolutely adored. I love this book. This was absolutely fantastic. I continue to think about this book. It's that good. I just really loved it. It has a beautiful cover and a beautiful inside. But the reason I put this as a quest is we have these 3 students, or 3 kids, who on their way to school, they hear a dog barking and they go to save this dog, and then suddenly as they leave the room, they're on this giant ship in a big canyon, and they're like, how? Where are we? And they find out that they accidentally space traveled to the year 2473, so they are very far into the future, and they have, in order to get back home, they have to complete different tasks and play a game that is kind of like a virtual game that is not like a virtual like VR set or something like that, because you're actually in the game physically. It's really cool. Like, the whole concept is really cool, and they're just going through like all of this, and they have to find this person who invented something called time keys, which is the only way that you can travel in time, because that kind of technology only exists in the future, not today. And they need to find him. That's kind of like the whole quest. They have to go through all of these different challenges and games to find this guy to return home. Then we have Friends to Lovers, and I chose Heartstopper Volume 1. And again, it doesn't matter. I just took the first in a series again. But it's Friends to Lovers. That's the whole thing with this. Then we have the book loving character, and I chose the Meet Cute Club. This is literally a book club we have a main character who loves romance books, and he is going in like this bookstore to buy a big stack of romance books. And the guy in the counter is like, "Are you a grandma? Why are you reading grandma books?" And that guy eventually goes to the book club called Meet Cute Club. But it has a lot to do with loving books, loving romance books, and it's a male romance, and it's really good. This one was a lot trickier than I expected it to be, but when I saw the book I was like, yes. And it's Amnesia, so a book featuring a character with amnesia, and I chose More Happy Than Not. The whole thing with this is that in this world there is a company that, like, if you've seen the movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, that's kind of like the concept here. You can go to a company and get your memories erased. And our main character got his memories erased. And you can consider it kind of like content warnings for homophobia and internal homophobia and mild homophobia, but like those kinds of things. And also suicidal ideation and suicide attempt and self-harming. A lot of content warnings. I don't want to explain further because it's a spoiler, and it also, I should use another content warning, and it's a parent died in suicide. The dad took his own life is another content warning. This one I'm a little bit unsure of, but it's Magic School, and I chose Every Heart a Doorway because technically it is magical. We have like all of these children who went through portals to their ideal world, and then they came back to our world, and they have a very difficult time like getting used to not being in that world anymore, and get used to being back in our world is something that they're all really struggling with. And because they all are aware of this other the magical parallel universes, and they are sent to this school for children who went to other worlds, I think it should count as a magic school. Then we have the bad boy character, and I chose the Cavicious Spirits. And we have like Jiun, who is a dokepi, and dokepi is kind of like a Korean gremlin, something like that. It's a being from Korean folklore and mythology, and this guy, Jiun, is one. And he is kind of like an asshole sometimes, but he's a very like charismatic person that you can't help but love him. I absolutely adore him. He was very relatable. He doesn't think that he's good enough for anyone. His kind of like bad boy demeanor is mostly to push people away because he doesn't feel like he deserves friends or friendships or love. He doesn't feel like he deserves any of that. So he's very like, has a lot of self-hatred basically. But I really enjoyed this book. Then we have The Prompt Resurrection. So this one I struggled with quite a lot as well. My main issue with this was the whole thing, a character that you thought was dead. Because there are a few books that I have where someone else thought the character was dead, but they weren't. But I decided to go with The Fellowship of the Ring, which is Ringens Brödraskap in Swedish. And this is the first book in the Lord of the Rings series. And I chose this because there is a very beloved wizard who dies but comes back. Yeah. Then we have Redemption Arc, and I chose one of my absolute favorite books of all time, which is The Humans by Matt Haig. And this is another science fiction book that I love. We have this kind of like huge mathematician in the UK who solves the biggest mathematical problem that proves that aliens exist. And so an alien is sent to take this man's place, to look like him, to act like him, and to eliminate the proof that aliens exist. And he goes there with that purpose in mind. I'm gonna kill every human who knows that this man solved the problem, solved the mathematical problem. I am going to kill every single human who knows that aliens exist. And while doing that, he understands humans better, and that's why it's like called The Humans. And this alien learns from the humans, and he learns what it is to be human. And it's kind of like a redemption in that way, that he goes to Earth with that idea in mind, that I'm gonna kill these people to erase the evidence. But instead he learns to love humanity and work against the people he worked for. I really loved how it depicted philosophy and humanity, and it's a very Matt Haig thing to write about, which is like no surprise that I loved the Midnight Library as well. I have loved every Matt Haig book I have read, but this redemption arc because of that. And then the last book is Forbidden Love, or Forbidden Love / Forbidden Romance, and I chose the last book in the Captive Prince trilogy, which is King's Rising. And as I explained earlier what Captive Prince was about, the two princes, the enemies to lovers aspect, this is Forbidden Love, kind of like that, because in this book, is that a spoiler? Okay, so we have these two crown princes, as I said for the first book, who fall in love. Like, that's what I said for the first book. That is forbidden love. Like, the two people who are supposed to rule a country are both men, so that they can't really, you know, be together because they have to continue their line. They have to have an heir, you know. So it's kind of like a forbidden romance, a forbidden love story in that way. Yeah, I feel like I don't know. I feel like that's enough to say. I don't want to spoil anything, but those were the 20 tropes that got me, that took me 9 minutes and 10 seconds to find. I am surprised that I found a book for each trope. I did not expect that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you would like to do this little video, consider yourself tagged, and please tag me so I can watch your video where you do this. And if you're interested in doing this, all of the tropes and the information is down below, so you have all of the tropes and the information down below if you're interested in checking that out and doing one yourself. Really excited to see what you can come up with. But thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next time. Good reading. Bye.